Hello, my name is Jordan from Soups and Sabers,
And I'm Logan from the Screen Society podcast.
and we're here talking episode 2 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, titled Hard Salt Beef, written by Aziza Barnes and Ira Parker, directed by Owen Harris, and it premiered January 25th, 2026 on HBO Max and HBO. How are you doing today, Logan?
Jordan, I am manning the wall in the north. Jon Snow and I are currently sitting on the northern border of Florida, trying to keep all of you northerners out of the White Walkers up there.
Yeah, we're in the true
our
north
state.
out here. We're in the beyond
You are
the
the White
wall up here.
Walkers. Yeah.
You should see how much snow we have. And we're supposed to get more this weekend, supposedly. So ranging anywhere from, they said it could rival last weekend to just 3 other inches. So I guess we'll figure out, because we ended up with almost 11, so I guess I'll figure out as we get closer to it what's going to happen.
Right.
But today was the first day I could get out and actually like get the car out and everything.
Yeah. I saw you guys were getting all sorts like nor'easter and like snow bombs and all sorts of different things that they're like, oh man, watch out, because that might if it did what it did last weekend, you guys would probably just be under ice at that point. Like you guys would become the north. Like it's been nice knowing you.
Last weekend didn't end up as bad as they thought. While we did get double digit, they were like, the real thing to watch out for is that we were supposed to get like an inch of ice, which would have knocked out power for a lot of people. But it never got that bad with the ice. But that's what it is. But I'm not looking forward to going through it again this weekend. But all of the schools were off for a full week. They already canceled for Thursday and Friday because
so
the
they
roads.
don't do remote
I just
school?
I just went across the street to get
That's
groceries during my lunch break, and it was like, if there's 3 lanes to make a left, go straight, and make a right, really only the middle and like half of those other lanes are open still.
Okay, yeah.
So like the main routes and routes are open, but like the road that I get onto to turn onto a major one is still kind of rough, like almost 1 lane. So I'm gonna try going in tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. But even the parking lot was kind of a mess at the grocery store, and to turn into it.
If that happened, Jordan, in Florida, there would be a battle for all the kingdoms in all of Florida. Like there would be, I mean, there's already people, because we're supposed to get flurries in Tampa and like our county and Polk, because I'm close enough. I'm only like an hour from Tampa, like in between them and Orlando. And like, we're supposed to get flurries. And I'm like, that is, they are the weather guys.
That really is
that scene from
that scene from Game of Thrones where it starts flurrying in King's Landing.
yeah.
What
it's
is
like,
this?
is this? I'm pretty sure this is Dragon Ash. But yeah, no, it's crazy. Like it really does feel. I feel like Jon Snow when he's sitting out there and his wind's blowing in his face, and like you could just see the
He's
snow.
got snow in his
down.
beard.
Yeah. So
speaking of Game of Thrones, just to make it clear too, we are doing a joint podcast for the season for Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which means you're hearing us both on the Screen Society and Soups and Sabers. And like I said, we're talking episode 2 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which was called Hard Salt Beef. And we got to see something that wasn't really hard, but big at the beginning here of this episode. We open up with
I don't know about
flashback.
big, Jordan. It's pretty small.
Oh, okay. Man, we open up with a flashback to Sir Arlen as Dunk is trying to get the other knights and lords to vouch for him. He's just giving all these, kind of thoughts about who he was as a true knight and everything. And we see him come out of the shack and he just starts whipping it. He's naked. He starts peeing right there. Obviously a prosthetic. I think I read an article. There was an article that came up about how they did it and stuff. But I'm assuming, anytime somebody like throws up or you get something in these shows, they usually like run a wire, like a tube of anything. And that's why like TV shows that'll look weird when characters throw up, is because they usually have to put their hand like this to block their face, and then of course it shoots out like that.
Yeah,
I'm assuming the tube for the pee is just in the prosthetic and it just starts going. And I'm sure they can digitally remove some of it, but they did not have to. They didn't digitally remove the penis there.
Yeah.
So I'm shocked, Logan, because I feel like he should be easily remembered then with this.
So I was making this joke online. I was like, the knights might not remember him, but the ladies do.
Yes, he's a ladies' man.
He was. I didn't know that Sir Arlen was a ladies' man, but yeah, we got Jordan. Now we've got a penis and a poop. What else is next? Like, I'm pretty excited to see what other bodily function we get to see.
Yeah, that makes me wonder if George R. R. Martin was watching this scene like, what the hell? I didn't write that in there.
Ira Parker was like, I mean, this is what these people do. I'm like, yes, Ira, but we don't need confirmation that he pisses.
Yeah, that's probably what George is thinking. But George really likes the show. He worked pretty well with Ira on this.
Yeah.
And has a little bit of Game of Thrones news, I guess, is that George is nowhere close to still finishing Winds of Winter 15 years later.
Did you see what he said? He goes, my dying wish is to get that done. It's like,
yeah, and he also wants to do 12 novellas.
Yeah.
Of this, and he's got 3 done.
I'm okay with that, actually. I'm actually okay with
he
that.
He can work faster on this, I'm
yeah.
assuming. But he gave, I guess,
this.
the other outlines to Ira Parker. But I'm like, look, this is where Game of Thrones kind of went off the track a bit. Just write the novellas, George.
That's a good point.
Just write the novellas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know if we're getting 12 seasons of this show to begin with. It makes me wonder kind of what the end goal is for this show, because I think it's nice as just, we've talked about the different of tone of this show compared to Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. More so House of the Dragon, because Game of Thrones season 1 kind of has these bits and bobs in it where it's kind of humorous. But these characters do have an ending in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, there is allusions to their fate for Duncan Egg. There is it's going to be in the next book he's writing, the sequel to Fire and Blood. I think they're calling Blood and Fire or something, but it's Fire and Blood was the Targaryen history that they based House of the Dragon off of. He's writing a second book of that, which I don't know if he's made any progress on that. It's becoming a trend, but
he's that kid in school, Jordan, that promises you better results but he just can't get there. He gets too distracted.
I think what it is he, he said he put all of those aside to start working on Winds of Winter.
All right.
And he's still at like 1,100 pages, which is what he was at like in 2020, I think he said. So look, he also goes back and changes things as he's right. So he could have actually be making progress, but it just ends up where he's deleting pages and adding different pages, and it's just almost the same length, So it's like that could be what it is too. But my concern for this is, like, I think each of these seasons, from what I understand of the novellas, are pretty standalone adventures of Dunk and Egg. So really, this show doesn't need a definitive ending. So my wonder is, I guess if it's popular, which so far it is, the ratings have been great
through the roof
for the first season, for the first episode. We don't have them in for the second one yet, but for the first episode, it was pretty high, and it's still on HBO Max, like top shows and stuff. But my wonder with that is, I guess each one they could just make a season each time and just think that maybe this is the end. They're already filming season 2, or they're starting to film season 2 like this month, so it can release next year. I'm assuming they'll do the same thing for season 3, start filming during season 2, and kind of get this out yearly. But do you think that this show ends at season 3, unless if George comes out with the 4th novella, or do you think they do push and go to his other stories? They're not going to make 9 more novellas. He's not going to write 9 more novellas before these characters and actors are too old, and it takes a year to make one of these seasons. Like, we're not going to end up with like the guy who plays Egg, the kid who plays Egg, Dexter, right? Dex. We're not going to end up with him being like taller than Dunk, like still making these seasons. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's gonna be hard to do. He's 6'5", so
yeah.
Dexter's very small. That's why they casted him. No, I think we're setting up to. I think that they have plans, Jordan, to go at least 5 or 6 because I feel like they're doing what they were doing with House of the Dragon. Is House of the Dragon's going to have now 3 seasons, and then this will be done with season 1. Season 3 will premiere. So like they're already 2 seasons ahead, right? So I think that that's kind of where we might be set up because I know now there's been rumors, obviously, that Arya Stark might be the one that they're spinning off instead of Jon Snow, and there's a bunch of that going around where like are they spinning off one of the original which I kind of hope they just move past that into something else. I just don't know. I don't know where we go. Like
there's rumors of Aegon's Conquest becoming a show or a feature film. Was the latest update they said I guess it was in the George interview or something.
I kind of do you think, Jordan, maybe like this is where my head was going. My thought was like they're doing House of the Dragon, they're going to end it, and then as this starts to go towards, we get closer and closer to a certain point with a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Do we get the years in between House of a Dragon and a Knight? You know what I mean? Like because that whole sequence before A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms takes place is like fascinating. Just the history of
first,
it, the lore.
First Blackfire.
Right. Yes.
So there's a few of them too. So
yes,
it is curious because here's my concern with House of the Dragon right now. I'm not somebody that disliked the second season the way that people have kind of really been spewing stuff about it. But I do think that because just to be clear, I think I talked about it in one of our episodes that I did on Supes and Sabers back when it was Fantasy Folk, and we talked about the state of Game of Thrones franchise. But supposedly, what was reported is that there were supposed to be 10 episodes of House of Dragon Season 2. And during the writer's strike, HBO cut it, or WB, somebody up there, cut it down to 8 episodes because of the strike and because they weren't done writing the other 2 episodes, I guess. And they just had to kind of make it work as a finale, which is why it seems like build up to a battle that doesn't happen is because that was originally supposed to be like episode 9 and then episode 10 would have been something else. Now they then are moving those episodes into season 3, but they're still only getting 8 episodes, I believe. So now they're going to have to like truncate even more. They just came out and confirmed for sure that season 4 is the final season of it. So we only have 2 seasons left of House of Dragon. As somebody that read Fire and Blood, there's still a good bit to go.
Yeah.
And also my favorite part of that book was the fallout from after the war, which I'm now scared they are going to just ignore.
Yep.
It introduces a great Stark character. Like it is so good that now I'm kind of like that's where I'm kind of like I don't know how they're going to do this in 4. With this, I think what's been so good is that this is a novella, obviously. So it's only 80 some pages, but we're getting 6 episodes. Yes, they're half hours, but so far they've been paced very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting added scenes that are adding characters that are going to be important later on in this season to introduce them so they don't come out of left field in the final episode of the season. But it just feels better. It feels better because I think I mentioned this last week. They are taking the words and a lot of the actual dialogue from the book that George wrote and putting it on screen, while like House of the Dragon is a almost like history textbook that they are having to convert into those scenes. So it is a little bit more uneven in that regard. I guess my main worry is like, are they going to try to get us to the end of these characters as a whole that happens in the, in the actual timeline?
Yeah.
Because if so, that's way and way down the road. Or is it just like, this is our fun Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Dunk and Egg journeys, and that's all we're going to get. Not to go on a tangent there, but we just did without even really talking about the show. But I think it was a good conversation on how it's going.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also see that during this, Lord Leo Tyrell, as we're introduced to the Tyrells of this time, says that he doesn't remember him. Dunk was like, "Hey, he always quoted this thing you said," and he's like, "Nope, don't remember him." Now, knowing what we know about the Lance story with Baelor later, do we think that Tyrell actually said this to him? To Arlen, or is it like Arlen was kind of spinning some stuff for Duncan, or is it just like supposed to be that just Tyrell's a lord and doesn't remember him, but he did say this?
I do feel like a little bit of both, because there's where Maekar makes a comment in a scene with Dunk later. He makes the comment of like, why would you remember a lowly Hedge Knight? Like,
yes,
I think there's some of that. I do think that, and these people were drunk off their tail. Like, we've seen so many drunk people in this show and in this universe where, I mean, I could see them not remembering Arlen, but I do think it is interesting, Jordan, that if he would have recognized something that he said all the time. You know what I mean? Like, Tyrell would have been like, "Oh yeah, no, I do say that all the time, so you must be telling the truth." But I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that there is some of the, well, I don't want more competition, because he doesn't really truly know what this person is up. Like, Duncan is he good? Like, is Dunk going to be somebody that is a challenger? I think there's a lot of that. But then also, I mean, this dude he's probably run up against so many knights he really doesn't remember.
Yeah, I think you can kind of probably read it as both ways. I'm assuming we're supposed to read it as just Tyrell doesn't remember him because of, like you said, like, it's just a Hedge Knight, right? Like, even though the thing he says is that Hedge Knights are like the, like whatever that quote is, like that they're the heart of something, whatever the quote was, I can't remember. But, it does seem like maybe he was just spouting off for Arlen, and then doesn't actually remember saying that, or who knows. But he's really striking out here, Dunk, and we get then the Targaryens arriving, and we're introduced to the Targaryens of this age. As of note, we are not spoiling anything past this in the novella and that. So what we'll say here is that the Targaryens arrive. Egg is kind of like scared, or I'm not gonna say probably.
They've got a big reputation, Jordan.
Yeah.
Like, the Targaryens have a very rule by power, which they've always had back to their days, right? So I think that's why you see Egg kind of like, I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, he says he's gonna go back to the their camp and do that, and Dunk's like, "You better not be stealing from me."
I love the whole
I'll
thing.
put the dogs on you, and he's like, "You don't have any dogs."
Yeah, and he goes bark, and he's like, "Oh no!" But I love that whole build up to why do basically. There's a little bit of that too. Of the Egg is he's walking through, going, "Why did you bring me around this?" So obviously, I think Egg, through the buildup of his character this episode, you can see he's been around somebody of royalty. Like, he's been, like a servant, or he's run away from a kingdom or something like that. So he knows. You can tell it because he knows certain things about all of these houses, and he knows all of these knights, and he knows all of these things. So he's clearly been around a kingdom.
And there's something in the last episode when he's in the stables, he says, "My lord," to him. Which is instead of like what a
my lord,
instead of what like a commoner would say. So
you can tell the difference between Dunk and listen to when Dunk says it and listen to when Egg on. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like Egg is perfectly cast because he's got such a good banter with that. So I don't know. It's pretty good.
Well, we're introduced also to Prince Arian, who thinks that Dunk is a stable boy here. And he has to tell him, like, "No, I have the honor of being a knight." But Dunk is also going to meet the King's Guard and kind of ask them how they became members of the King's Guard. One of them says he came from like a family of crabbers, and look at him now. We'll later learn that like his family is still well-to-do. They are like the Crabbers.
Yeah,
So like
they're literally Maryland. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, exactly.
That's what I
And
kept thinking. I was like, it's Jordan.
that's my house sigil.
Yeah, that's what I
So
figured.
but that's another instance right there where you're saying Egg knows them.
Yeah.
Like he's the one that says that, and they're like, "How do you know
Oh yeah.
that?"
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, Egg's onto everything though. Like Egg is smart. You can tell he's very observant, and he's on to everybody. Like this kid is on all sorts of,
mhm.
like, especially Dunk. He can tell what Dunk's thinking and what he's, there's a scene coming up we'll talk about that I really love, but you can tell he's just on everything, and he can tell what's coming because because of who he's been around or what he's been around, which is interesting because it's like, you're starting to go, who is this kid?
Yeah, that's the question here. Dunk goes to see like the list keeper for the tourney, and as he goes in, he overhears the Targaryens who are talking in this room here. We're introduced to Baelor and Maekar, and who Maekar has two sons who are missing, Daeron and Aegon, missing. Baelor gives a little quiz to Dunk here about Arlen and like the history of certain knights that Arlen has faced to kind of see if he actually does know his stuff. And then he says he will vouch for Dunk, but he tells the story about how Arlen broke 4 of Baelor's lances. Dunk pipes in and says it was 7. Baelor corrects him and says it was 4, but the stories grow in the retelling.
Dunk's reaction to that's great when he's like, "I'm so sorry." Like he calls me thick-headed and I'm an idiot, basically. And
yes, and that line that he says about like thick as a castle wall is something that in the novella he repeats to himself all the time when he's upset with himself for like making the wrong decision. But no, Baelor, this is probably my favorite Targaryen ever. This is mine. I mean, like he is, he is the opposite of what a Targaryen usually is, right? Like he gives grace to Dunk when he cuts him off on this, and he's like, and he even gives an excuse. So like, hey, you're, he was gives a reason, like, hey, you know what? When people boast, they add a little bit of more lances each time. Like it started as 4, then it probably went to 5, then it probably went to 6. Now it's at 7. And like you said, Maekar is very like, why would you remember this, Hedge Knight? And really, I think he even tells Dunk to like F off, right?
Yeah.
But like Baelor has the grace. He is the hand of the king right now. He's actually next in line for the throne if something were to happen to Maekar, which, Dunk again stumbles a lot here when he says, I always hear great things about you, and how, Sir Arlen used to say the hands of like the kingdoms would be in great hands with you. And Baelor has to be like, well, hopefully not for a lot more years, because
and his brother scoffs.
Right
every time though he scoffs. And then I love it because also Maekar takes it as like an insinuation that something is going to go wrong with the king. Like you can just tell he's like up in arms constantly. And then I love that line too, because I think it follows it, where he's talking about don't worry about my brother, his 2 sons are missing. And Duncan goes, well, I hope they're found alive. And they kind of look at him like,
I assure you they'll be found not dead or something. It's like, okay.
Maekar's like,
of you, Dunk.
Yeah, are you killing my kids? Like, what's happening out there? So it's a great, like, you're right, Jordan. Like Baelor Targaryen gives me like, he kind of gives me like Ned Stark feels. Like he's very like honorable. He gets like, he
who he reminds me of as a Targaryen is Jon Snow.
Yes. Yeah, Yep. It's just the nobility. Like I don't know, he just carries himself a little bit of like the way that when Tyrion isn't clowning around and being like, Tyrion is very open and like forgiving and gives grace, where a lot of people typically don't. But yeah, I could see
true.
that.
I mean, I was watching a scene I was watching these people react to Game of Thrones today, and they were watching a scene where Bronn and Jaime are practicing,
Mhm.
and Jaime says, "Do you talk to my brother like this?" And he
Yeah.
says, like, all the time. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Tyrion does not mind if people are giving it back to him.
Yes.
He will shoot straight with you. And that's kind of how
Yes.
Baelor is. But he's a little bit more forgiving as well. So
Yes.
no, I really like him. We have Duncan Egg. He also tells Baelor that Baelor tells him he's going to need a new coat of arms. That is the one thing. Like, the only person that can now have the chalice with the wings is somebody of Arlen Pennytree and like his sons. So
Mhm.
you're gonna need a new coat of arms. Like, that's something you don't get from being a knight, from being knighted by him.
He also makes mention too of just to speak to the nobility of Baelor is he says that even when he beat Sir Arlen of Pennytree, he gave him back his horses and his
Yes,
swords and
he did
everything.
not hold him for ransom,
Yeah.
which is what we learn in the last episode is what
Mhm.
typically happens. No, so he's good guy Baelor is
Mhm.
what we're learning here. So Dunk and Egg then go and watch one of Tansel, the puppeteer performances. Again, this is much more eh, grand than I think than the book was mentioning. They were like more like marionettes. These are like huge. We saw the dragon last time. This time we see like a knight, Florian the Fool, who's like really like a tall mannequin. And they do like these fire pyrotechnics. They're like, this is like the Disney of
I was
Game
gonna
of
say this.
Thrones.
Yeah, it's like Vegas. Like this feels very like Vegas and fire
Like,
shows and
Walt
like
Disney, if he was in this world, is creating these puppets
yeah,
and the pyrotechnics.
100%. I love this scene because when she's done talking and doing her storytelling, like her interaction with him, like this stretch of this show for about 15 minutes is so funny. It has got such a good heart to it, and this is why I'm falling in love with it more and more because when she's like, oftentimes I get called too tall, and he's like, no, you're just right. And they kind of look at him, and Egg is like looking at him next to him, like, "What are you talking about, dude?" And he goes, "You know, for
For
puppets."
puppets.
Egg is just
Yeah.
like, what are you trying to do, dude?" It's just like that little sidekick where Dunk has no ability to talk to women that he's interested in, and Egg is just like, "It's not that hard, man."
Yeah, it's Egg saves him here with the for puppets line that but Egg is so interested in the pyrotechnics. Like, how'd you do that
Yes.
stuff? And it's like, what is it? Some sort of like powder or sand into the
Yeah,
fire
she
that makes
explains
it.
it to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he asked Tansel to paint him the new coat of arms because she paints the puppets. Her like father or uncle or somebody, right? Like makes the puppets and she paints them. And the first thing that comes to mind for him is a sunset because the old man likes sunsets and the colors in them. Then I think this is when Egg sticks mentions the elm tree. I think in the book, Dunk is the one that comes up with all of it. But then
Mhm.
Dunk, after seeing what happened at the end of last episode with the falling star, says a falling star as well. So it'd be like a sunset with the elm tree and the falling star. Now, I don't know how they're going to do this in the show, but I just want to point out something that happens in the book with this. And I don't know if it's right when he is. I forget if it's right after he thinks about it or if it's when he starts showing off the shield. But he notices that a sunset is like typically for like going down, like it's
Yeah.
sunsetting,
Yes.
not a
Yep.
sunrise, and that a falling star is also falling. And he's kind of like, that's not good for me. It's like these two things out of the three things on this shield have the connotation of like
Death in
bad
the end.
imagery of
Yeah.
falling. The sun
Yeah.
setting on you is not a good thing typically,
No.
as beautiful as it is. And then we have this is a new scene that comes in here is Lionel Baratheon drafting Duncan Egg to help him in his tug of war. And which they end up winning. But this is what I mean by adding scenes for characters that are important later.
Yeah.
Lionel Baratheon is important later in the story, and they had to introduce him last week and you kind of got to keep the characters like in front of the audience to remember this guy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see him throughout the season, and I think that's important for them to do. And this is also a very fun scene because you have Egg hanging on the rope, like not even feet on the ground.
Oh yeah, not helping at all. Yeah, yeah. And then Lionel,
even Lionel not helping.
Yeah, he's like, I'm out, dude. Like,
yeah,
he's doing his little dance that he usually does, and it's leading up to this scene where it was my favorite part of the whole episode is when they're sitting on that table looking at these guys playing tug of war, and and Dunk is sitting there, and Egg is talking about the fact that he wants to become a knight someday, and he goes, but I'm just too small, like I'll never get to that. And Dunk says, well, I always got told I was stupid and dumb for doing things, because he's trying to reassure Egg, like, you can do whatever you want to do. And he says, yeah, everybody always used to tell me I'm dumb. And he kind of leaves it up for Egg to be like, no, dude, you're not dumb. And he doesn't say anything, and he goes, and then Dunk's like, well, I don't know, like there's always these moments, Jordan, where like his advice stops because he's not the smartest guy. So it kind of like just kind of stops with his advice, and he doesn't really know where to go next. And Egg's like, dude, did you die? What just happened? So it's one of my favorite scenes because he's just like, you get it. I laughed out loud for that one. That was good.
Yeah, their dynamic has been great, and they end up winning, right? The Baratheon side. And then we kind of go back into what an actual book scene. Now, this is out of order, and this is what I was wondering if they were going to still do this last week when we were talking about it. But this is something that happens that first day when he's putting in his name in the list, or trying to, is that he meets an armorer named Steely Pate. And this whole exchange here of like, I got 200, it's going to cost 800. I can give you 200 now. And then he has to go sell the horse, Sweetfoot, and hopefully try to win her back, and, win with the winnings, buy her back. But just the type of guy Dunk is here when he sells the horse and gives some of the money back to say, hey, use this to give the horse oats and an apple, make sure she's eating good, type of thing. So I just really like that. That's the type of guy that Dunk is. He, cares for the horse and hopefully is going to try to win them back.
Yeah, it's so cool because like throughout this whole arc so far, and throughout the first two episodes, you get the sense that everybody that Dunk encounters, they know that he's Hedge Knight, and oftentimes you actually hear them reference the way he looks or smells, because they do the same thing when the Targaryens arrive. That they make they say, you smell like you're not of a house or a kingdom.
And his belt is still a rope belt.
Right. Yeah, he's still walking around. I mean, the dude looks like he wandered out of the bushes. But again, like you see this throughout these two episodes. And then Jordan, you can see a very human side of Steely Pate. Like he is very much, he wants to upcharge because all these knights can afford it. And this guy is very talented in the armor that he makes. But he's like, I can give you the most basic things for this. And he's trying to help him out. But you can see it in his mind, like looking at Dunk as he's really struggling, like, man, I can't afford any of this stuff. And he's trying his best to help him out. But I mean, the guy's got to make money too. And he's kind of in that same situation, probably a little higher, obviously, than a Hedge Knight. But like, Steely Pate's kind of, but it's such a cool moment. It's a heartfelt moment because of the horse. And you get a sad little goodbye for now.
And then we get the actual tournament beginning, which is at night. I think this is for the show. I don't remember it being night in the novella. I feel like it'd be tough to see what's going on if you're...
Yeah.
I feel like they would usually do it during the day.
Right. And this time, yeah, right. In these days with no electricity, it's kind of like...
Especially if the Targaryens are wearing like black armor. You're like, I don't know who's winning. So we get this first jousting matches, which is, by the way... Maryland's state sport, jousting. That's a fun little trivia bit that nobody ever gets right. And we get Prince Baelor Targaryen, and we get a Tully here that are in the participants. And Dunk kind of like I don't know, like zones out a bit during this, and I love Egg just being like, almost like a soccer hooligan who's just like shouting, yeah,
like put me up on your shoulders, like get me up. I'm gonna get up on this fence, like I gotta get to where I can see the game.
Yes.
The match. So he's very excited.
And later, they're back at their camp, and he's acting out like the Blackfire Rebellion. He's like, he's telling them to get down or like stay down, and he's just playing, and he sees that Dunk is kind of pondering. Here, and it's kind of where we leave the story here, but so I guess overall, what do you think here as we're a third of the way through already?
Yeah. Again, like I said, I think the rating and all the reviews that you're saying online across the board and how high this show, like it's getting all the way up to like 94, 96%. It's like right in that sweet spot on Rotten Tomatoes, and the audience score is fantastic across the board. It's got such great storytelling. I think the cool thing is while there are a cast of characters, it's not quite as extensive as the ones in Game of Thrones and sometimes House of Dragon can be, where you're really trying to focus on characters, but they keep introducing such important people. And I know that will happen. It's a Game of Thrones show. I know we'll start to get more and more as the Targaryens are introduced, as the people that are fighting for House Tyrell and all of them are, you're going to get more. It still
won't happen as much as Game of Thrones and House of Dragon, because this is all focused on this Ashford Meadow tourney that we are introduced, I would say, as somebody that's read the whole thing, to, I would say, most of the characters that we're going to see meet at this point in the story. Because, like I said, you have a shorter runtime, you got to kind of get them out there. There are characters that we met last week that didn't show up in this one that I'm sure will show up next week, because they're going to have to keep those in front of the audience, right? They probably don't want too many episodes to go by before some of these characters appear again, because people will be like, who are those guys again? I mean, we've talked about it before, but Game of Thrones, like that was a show that it took you a bit to know everybody, right? And same thing, like my first watch through, I had the DVDs and it had this nice family tree type of thing. But I just know, like, when I would sometimes be talking to it about it to like my parents, and they're like, which guy is that again? If I'm talking about some like side character, not like one of the main guys. They all knew the main guys. But if I'm saying like a side character type thing, they're like, wait, who are you talking about? I'm like, remember that guy that did that? They're not going to want that for this. So like I'm assuming, since it is so focused, we're going to see a lot of these characters just over and over again. I'm looking at the episode titles for the next two. So the next one's The Squire, which will, I don't know if there's much speculation there on what that is, but episode 4 title kind of surprises me. I'm not going to say what it is, because I think that is a pretty big part of the novella, and I was kind of expecting that to be later in the season. So I'm kind of shocked that says that's what it is for 4. But again, these are like 30 minutes, so I guess they will be moving pretty quickly. But I was kind of expecting that to be like episode 5, and then so
it's a big enough title where IMDb doesn't have it listed yet. I saw it on Twitter too, or X. I was like, oh, really? That's So
it's not like big.
But it's,
if you know the story, you know what it is. So like that's the thing.
But no, I'm digging this show, man. Like this is so good. They've done a wonderful job casting once again, and just I think Egg and Dunk's dynamic is I think we've seen in TV, we gravitate to those types of relationships where they play well off of one another. you and I you're currently watching a show, and I'm rewatching a show that same kind of character dynamics in Scrubs or like Stranger Things, or you just keep naming them. They've got perfect duos that bounce off of each other so well. And that it's chemistry. Like, you find a kid that's not a great actor. I'm not sure that this quite works like you would really want it to. It's cool because Ira Parker has to take a lot, like you said, Jordan, back in last episode. It is so heavy and introspective, and like it's inner dialogue happening a lot in novella. Not really much dialogue between Dunk and some of these characters that they're having to try to build, which is a very difficult thing to do. And I think George knows that as he begins writing other things, but it's so hard to adapt like film from a book and not, have to add scenes, obviously, but you want to do what the original writer did. You want to do that justice. So, but this is, like I said, this is every time that I get done watching this, I'm always like on X, and it kind of feels similar to, I didn't watch Game of Thrones originally, so I have to compare it to something else. So when Stranger Things, once it started to pick up its feet, it reminds me of just everybody was so impressed with how well this show's written.
Because here's the thing, I saw a lot of talk before the season, right? Like the day that it premiered, a lot of people on Twitter being like, "This show has had like no hype. Like a new Game of Thrones show is coming out and nobody's talking about it." Well, it got 6.7 million viewers in its first 3 nights on HBO Max and on TV, but that is the third largest 3-day viewership for a series debut in the service history. So, it kind of gained traction after that first night. I feel like everybody, is probably watching some football, and then they see the good reviews and are like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll check that out." So that's pretty big for that. If you think about it, if I were to just go look right now at what Game of Thrones launched with, the original, it was not near that. Okay. Now, obviously, they didn't have HBO Max at the time, but season 1 premiered with 2.22 million viewers. That's in the US. I don't know how they do all that, but that's it. And it was very low amount. It didn't hit the numbers that we're looking at right now for 6 million until season 4. Now, of course, I think HBO might be counting that as worldwide, maybe. I don't know how they're doing this. I don't know what Game of Thrones worldwide ratings looked like, but if I'm just basing it off the numbers I have access to, we're talking about like the premiere is getting season 4 numbers for Game of Thrones. And that's when it was that's when it was really picking up steam. Like season 1 and 2 were 2 million, 3 million. Season 3 was 4 million. Season 3 was 4 million. Season 4 is when it gets to 6. Season 6, it hits 7. Season 7 hits 10. Season 8, it hits 11. It started becoming huge in those later years. But I think one thing I really like too is that this is yearly. I just looked it up. They started filming back in December of last year. So they are doing that. Game of Thrones with 10 episodes a season that were hour long was yearly. It was yearly. April 2011, April 2012, March 2013, April 2014, April 2015, April 2016, July 2017. So just a little bit more than a year there. And then the only season it didn't have anything was 2018, as they were doing the 6 episodes for season 8, and they really spent a lot of time, and those episodes were so much longer and stuff. So I want to get back to that. It's been 2 years for House of the Dragon each time, and it's like, if we can get this every single year for 3 to 4 years, I don't really know how they're going to go with it, but that would be, I think, a pretty great run for a show like this.
Yeah. There has been rumblings of the streaming companies and the entertainment companies that own these streaming platforms, that they realize that people aren't really thrilled with the way that they've had to wait for certain things. I think that there's a bigger focus on getting back to what especially with Jordan, the amount of episodes that now take place. Like, used to be it'd be 24 that the networks would buy, even for hour-long shows. They'd be in the 20s. Now they're only doing 10. They've got a higher budget. A lot of these shows, they can do this quicker. So I think that's where there's a lot of like fans kind of pushing back, like, hey, like, I know that you guys want to perfect this, and like there's a lot more CGI at times, and there's a lot more production stuff like that, but like these companies are so much bigger than they were back then. So it just,
well, yeah, I mean,
I think
HBO used to always be 10 episodes. Like Game of Thrones had 10,
Yeah,
Enthusiasm had 10, like I think Sopranos, Wire, all those shows had like 10 episodes consistently. And then
everybody adopted
cable kind of went with like 13 to 16.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe 18. And then when streaming came out, like House of Cards was one of the first streaming shows that went with 13 because that's what cable was doing. But then at a certain point, these shows started going from 13 to 10 to 8 to 6
to short series.
Even then, it's like they started going from yearly to 18 months to 24 months to 36 months. And you're like, okay, like the good thing is they're like network TV is still doing the yearly thing. But the thing with network TV right now is it is all, if you're not watching sitcoms, it is all police procedurals. They have a whole night of Chicago Fire and Chicago PD and Chicago whatever. Yeah, Med.
Yep.
And then they also have like CSI this, CSI
911.
This, and 911 this, 911 that.
Yep.
Each one of these networks have their own
multiverse.
Yeah, they either have one or two of these, Law and Order, right?
Yep.
And there aren't a lot of TV shows that have this type of not fantasy, but I mean like complex storytelling that are weekly episodes that get any amount of good run on TV right now. So that's one thing I really miss about TV. Like you and I are such TV heads, you know. Like this is.
Yep.
I used to be that nerd that in high school. I was looking at the television ratings to know what shows are getting canceled, what shows are getting renewed. Even if it wasn't a show I cared about, like the whole Scrub stuff we were just talking about, I knew what was going on with it in the sense of like when it wrapped up in season 8 and then they renewed it for season 9 as a spinoff, but they still called it Scrub season 9.
Yep.
I knew all of that stuff was going on, even though I didn't watch the show, because I was up on all of the, I think the website was TV by the numbers, and it would have all of the ratings for all the TV shows and what's, you know, close to getting canceled, what's getting renewed. So I find all of this stuff really fascinating, but I think with these type of numbers right now, this has a pretty open checkbook, especially they probably want a Westeros show on at every period they can. So if House of the Dragon takes another 2 years for the final season, they're like, yeah, we'll stick Dunk and Egg in here for season 2, right? And then they still have a Westeros show while not having House of the Dragon on. So I think that's what their goal is. And then, of course, if this show wraps up, they're like, hey, we got the Aegon show or the Aegon Conquest movie that is coming up now. And they'll always find something to try to fill in the gaps. They're going to Star Wars and Marvel it in the sense of, they always want something that throws on the screen at all times.
I think you make a point. You kind of touch on a point there, is that Jordan, this feels too like I feel like there's a lot of success and there's a secret sauce in this ability to tell stories that we're familiar with, because we know of, especially Game of Thrones, you can do each of the houses. Like you could go through all the houses and tell a story. Each of the kingdoms, you can go through Westeros and try to figure, like Jordan, I was looking at a map. It is so extensive, his history and his, like everything that he's built out with all these families, that he could really build out something. It reminds me, Jordan, of the best example I can give for people that are maybe watching this, they kind of feel like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, is it's the same feel I get when I watch The Mandalorian. it's so tied in, and it's much more crossovery with Mandalorian, obviously, because it does connect with all the things that we've grown up to love. But I do feel like it is a independent story that's got high enough stakes where you're really interested in those stakes. But it's more about just telling the story of a character who's not really involved in the major impactful things that you would normally see, especially like with the Hedge Knight. Like none of this is really impacting right now. It's high enough stakes, but not really impacting what goes on in the future for this universe. And I think you can tell great stories out of those types of things. It feels very much like people always, they compared it to like sports movies, kind of like a sporty movie where it's kind of the high stakes are there, but like it's not life and death kind of thing. Which Game of Thrones is more going to be more life and death because they're actually fighting each other. But it does feel very like a good, it's a feel good kind of story with Dunk.
Yeah,
the underdog.
Did you then read the continuation from that to this from last episode? Or
yeah, so and that's the hard thing. It's hard.
You have to kind of guess when it stops.
Yes, it is, because like they add so many scenes, and like there will be scenes that like you'll hear and you're like, oh, I didn't see that because it obviously didn't make the show. But then you're like, and then it comes back and you're like, all right, where do I stop? So I'm trying to, I don't want. I know enough, Jordan, where I might just listen to all of it now.
Yeah, I would say just go ahead.
I know enough of what's going on. So
the stuff that's going to happen in probably the next two,
yes,
will set the foundation for everything else. So I would just say probably just
okay,
finish it at this point.
Yeah, I was like, I might as well.
It is tough. I was wondering how you were doing it when you said it the last week, because I was like,
it was easey last week. It was easy last week because then they started to get into it started talking more.
But like I said,
about...
the armor scene would have been in last week.
Yes.
So like when you listen to that, were you thinking at all like, oh, maybe I stop it, or do
that's
I keep
where
going?
I was wondering, and I was like, no, maybe this is just not a scene interesting enough to have put in the show. And then it's like, oh no, there it is. So yeah, that's why I think I might just listen to it, because it's become very difficult because it's just so much like they've moved things around to make more sense for television.
Yeah, and not to probably have they probably wanted to introduce Baratheon last week, and they thought let's do that and have that scene and not have the armor scene and put that in this week to pad out the episode runtime, right? I mean, because like we said, I know some people were kind of like, oh my god, 30 minutes, really? It's like this whole story is like 3 hours at most, which is what you're kind of getting with the 30-minute 6 episodes. Pretty much getting 3 hours, but the book is like 2 hour 45, and like again, a lot of it's kind of internal thoughts at times, so you really have to change up how they're delivering it. And I think so far they really knocked it out with the first two, episodes. So I'm curious to see how next week's going to go with it. Hopefully, it seems like people are still vibing with it. My one worry was like, well, some people think it's going too slow because it is 30-minute chunks each week. All of these reviewers on like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff got to see the whole season up front, and, so they could have binged it at whatever pace they want it to binge it. But so hopefully like the viewers at home are like, oh yeah, this is still fun. This is still good at, the second episode here, and that, because I think the stakes are really going to go up in the next one.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, as we all have become aware of, I think Rotten Tomatoes with the critics, it's because a lot of the critics now, Jordan, there are a lot of influencers in those now, where there's more like you and me. Like
more like us, where they run YouTube channels.
Yes, like Kit from streaming things. Like he's gotten to review it. So like I listen to people like that.
I was listening
because I respect their opinions, because I feel, Jordan, that they are critical. You and I think you and I have discussed this on other podcasts, but if you're listening to us for the first or second time, we're not at like, you and I have agreed on this quite a bit, is that if it's entertaining and it's well written and it just gives us a good time, we're probably not going to be too harsh on it. But like with this, Jordan, I feel again, we're kind of, it's so hard to find a good spot to really go, and except for X, and that's such a cesspool because so much of it's robots now. It's so hard to find. You
Look
know
at
what I
any
mean? Like it's hard
popular
to find
post on
people.
there, and you
Yeah.
see the same responses back and forth.
Yeah,
It's like, oh
it's the
my
exact
god.
same crap. It's like, yeah, and it's all them copying each other. And you go click on it, and their location is like Iran. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that is not a real person. But yeah, it's just so tough, Jordan, to find. And that's why I hope that's what I hope podcasts do for people is like that's where I would go if you're looking for good reviews and commenting back and forth. Go to those podcasts and see what fans are saying because a lot of times I know streaming things does like a Q&A, like a mailbag, which you and I would love to do eventually if that ever became a
Yeah.
thing where we have people typing in and writing in. You get a real good sense of listening to people's podcasts that are not with a certain network or streaming platform, that you get real sense of what people are feeling about shows. So like if people are looking for people like-minded and what they're feeling about shows or want to have a good conversation, I think a lot of these podcasts do a good job because it allows them an outlet to really discuss things without sounding so like I hate this because it's slow. Like that's never made sense to me because again, you and I are we're TV heads and have been since we were very young. So I was always used to waiting a week for my shows, pretty much.
And the thing that I always miss is I know people complain about filler. I do miss filler episodes for stuff where you get to just spend more time with the characters.
Harder to do with 8 to 10 episodes, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of finales feel like mid-season finales
Yeah.
in the old days because
That's a great
that's
point.
that's how you used to, and then you would have like a back half of the season dealing with it, and then it would be you just had so many, like if I rewatch like Lost, like there's so many episodes where it feels like you get to know the characters because of the flashbacks and also because there are times where they are doing side missions of like, hey, we got to go hunt, we got to go eat, like we have to find shelter, those type of things, which is if it was condensed nowadays, Lost would have 8 episodes and it would be like the plane crash and then like the hatch and then the others and then finale, right? Oh my god, like that was quick.
And then everybody would be complaining about the end just like they did before.
That's true. Some things will never change. But so I am very happy with these 2 episodes. I think it's been paced great. I'm really looking forward to next week, which is called The Squire. It premieres February 1st. Episode 4 is supposedly premiering on Super Bowl Sunday. I know sometimes they bump it earlier or bump it later when it's running up against that. I'll be curious to see what HBO does. They might think of themselves as counter programming, especially if it's a 10 p.m. show. Like the Super Bowl is usually over by then. It's usually more of the post-game stuff since they start at like 6:30 on the Super Bowl. They could potentially think, hey, people are going to watch it right after the bowl or they'll watch it the next day. We're still putting it up at 10 o'clock. They might still go that route, which is, I wonder what they'll do. But right now, list it for Super Bowl Sunday. Okay. Anything else before we head out?
No. I'm having a great time. This is good. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great. You can follow my podcast, Supes and Sabers, at Supes and Sabers on all of our social media. I'm going to be recapping Wonder Man coming up here for Marvel on Disney Plus. We just did a great episode about all of the DC news that had been dropped since my co-host was sick in December. So we talked Supergirl trailer, all that good stuff. So if you like nerd stuff, fantasy, sci-fi, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Supes and Sabers has you covered there. Where can people follow you and your show, Logan?
Yeah, so same network. We're under the Logjam Media. So if you type that in Spotify, YouTube, we should pop up along with Jordan's shows. He covers a lot more fantasy and different things like that. I'll break into right now. I'm currently going through The Pit. I'll be doing Shrinking as well, which is a new show, or not a new show. A new season has dropped over on Apple TV. But yeah, you can find us at the Screen Society Podcast. Unfortunately, some of the tags are too long. Like that is too long of a tag. So if you just type in the search for the Screen Society Podcast, we'll pop up, or the Screen Society, we usually pop up. I think X and Instagram don't allow for me to have that long of a thing, so I had to get really creative with those, and I don't remember them off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but we're really just getting started.
I'll try to put them in my notes too,
Yeah.
so that way if people want to.
Well, thank you.
If people like you more than they liked me and want to follow you,
I mean,
they
that's
can
usually
do
pretty.
so.
That's usually pretty normal. No, I'm kidding. No,
back in the day, it was 2013. I feel like you were the most popular guy in our
No, no. If that was the case, it was only because I had a bigger ring of coworkers, whereas I felt like you guys were much more secluded. But no, I Jordan has great podcasts. If you're interested in, he's got a wealth of knowledge on things that I try to touch on with Star Wars and I try to touch on with Marvel, but I get to a certain depth and then I start saying names wrongs and planets wrong. So that's usually when I turn to. There's actually an episode with I just talked about Maul's trailer, and I'm like, yeah, it would be really nice to have Jordan on eventually, because there's some things where I get to, I'm like, yeah, my depth there is not as good as Jordan's. So.
Did you say it mid podcast?
Oh, 100%. I always do that. Like, yes. Yeah. There was, I forget exactly what it was. And I was like, well, my co-host on every other podcast you might have listened to that I've ever been on.
He would know. He would know.
He would definitely know. They're like, all right, this guy's making up some random person that's not real, like his imaginary friend or something.
But we'll be back next week for Night of the Seven Kingdoms 3, episode 3, as we'll be halfway through at that point. But thank you all for watching and listening along. We'll catch you next time when we talk the 3rd episode.